and we would like to listen to him for a little while, and then I'll moderate questions when you're done.
Oh, great. My wife says that I need to look at everybody, so I'm going to be spinning all around while I'm talking. Hopefully I don't get dizzy and fall off the stage. I feel pretty good tonight because I got my pocket constitution, and as I've been going around the state, a lady gave me a 4-leaf clover, so I'm feeling really good about life right now. I'd like to first acknowledge my wife Nancy, right there. We've been married for 42 years, and we have 4 kids and we have 9 grandkids, and I feel pretty fortunate. Let me just give you a brief introduction about myself and then talk about some of the issues that I care very deeply about, and then I'll open it up for questions and hopefully hear some of the things that you care about too, because the honest truth is every time I come to these meetings I walk away with another really good idea or two to put in my quiver so that I can go and fight. You know, we live in a constitutional republic, and that's what a constitutional republic's all about. It's about representing the people, and it's about being able to get great ideas from folks and carry those ideas forward and hopefully make good laws or get rid of bad laws, or both at the same time. But anyway, so I've lived here in Arizona most of my life. We moved here when I was 12 years old from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and graduated from Mesa High School. I met my wife when I was 21 years old and fell madly in love with her after just a couple weeks and proposed to her a few days later, and we got married within 6 months, and we've had a great marriage, and I really appreciate her. She's been my greatest supporter. Right after I graduated from college, I graduated from ASU, I took my first job with Mountain Bell. Any of you remember the phone company?
Yeah.
Before it all got divested and changed and everything, you know, everything's different now. Well, I worked for Mountain Bell. I started with them when I was 22 years old, and I worked for them for 13 years. I started with them as a construction manager in Tucson, Arizona, and after I'd been with them for 13 years, I became the Director of Public Relations for the state of Arizona. And I was driving to work, and I was listening to the guy that was representing me in the state legislature. Nobody in my family had ever really been involved in politics. We were all Republicans from the time I turned 18. And I'll tell you why I joined the Republican Party when I was 18. It was on one issue and one alone. It was because the Republicans were pro-life. And that was a really, really important issue to me. And so I joined the Republican Party, not knowing that they had a lot of other good policies and good things in their platform. But I was staunchly pro-life, so I joined the Republican Party. And anyway, so I ran for the state Senate back in 1989 and got elected. Knocked on literally thousands of doors and got elected. Had to work against all the establishment guys and everything. None of the party folks even really helped me, but I did get elected. And then served in the state Senate for 4 years. Some of the things that I did while I was there, charter schools. How many of you like charter schools? Okay, that was my bill. I was one of the original sponsors of the charter school legislation back in 1993. We were one of the first states in the country that started charter schools. Also, I don't know how many of you lived here for a long time. Do you remember back in the 90s when we were having the 100-year floods every year? Remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But on the news, just about every night, you'd see some real macho guy in his 4-wheel drive pickup, and he'd drive past the signs that said, "Do not enter when flooded," and he'd drive past the barricades, and then we would spend literally tens of thousands of dollars rescuing his sorry butt. And so I sponsored a bill, put a bill called the Stupid Motorist Act. That was my bill. And they talk about it every year when somebody gets rescued that does something stupid, because I believe in personal responsibility. I don't think government should be there to bail people out. I feel that way about welfare. I think every able-bodied American ought to work. And also, when I was in the state legislature, I sponsored workfare, which said that if you're getting welfare from the state, you actually have to work for it. And I think that's a positive thing. Anyway, so in 1994, I ran for Congress for the very first time. And I have a little news flash for you. When I ran for Congress, I had never even been to Washington, D.C. And so I didn't know a lot about, you know, what was going on there. I just knew that things were going to hell in a handbasket, and I felt like I needed to go back there because the federal debt was at like $4 trillion. And I thought that was cataclysmic, and I wanted to go back and stop the spending and try to balance the budget. And so I signed the contract with America. I won the primary, went back on the House steps, signed the contract with America. And you might remember, one of the issues in the contract with America was term limits. And I'm a strong, strong supporter of term limits. And I signed a pledge saying that I will abide by 3 terms and leave. There were 100 of us that year that ran for office that signed that pledge and won our elections. Guess how many of us actually kept our words when the time came due and left?
1.
5 of us.
Oh.
And I was one of the 5. I was the only one from Arizona that actually kept my term limit pledge and came home. Number 1, I believe in term limits, but number 2, I believe that when you give your word, it's done. And a lot of people said, "What are you, crazy? Are you sick? Are you stupid?" I mean, you could keep on going. In fact, my successor, Jeff Flake, made the same promise, and he broke his word. The fact is, I believe that politicians ought to do what they say they're going to do.
That's right.
And end of story. So anyway, while I was in Congress, we got a lot of good things done. In fact, Bill Clinton was the President of the United States, and yes, I did vote to impeach him. But during that time, we actually balanced the budget. We balanced it in 1988, in 99, and 2000. And when I left in 2000, we had a $140 billion surplus. The budget hadn't been balanced in like 40 years, and it hasn't been balanced since. And I'm proud to be part of that team that actually balanced the budget. And I'm also proud that during that time, the Citizens Against Government Waste, which is a group that looks at, they put out a scorecard, and they look at how you vote on spending and on taxes and everything, and then they determine who are the top people. Well, I was ranked number 4 out of all of Congress, out of 435 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate, in cutting wasteful spending and also cutting taxes. But, so, yeah, you can clap, it's all right. And I left Washington, and I came back home, and I went back to work in the private sector, and came back to my family, and sat it out for almost 12 years. And I never thought I was going to run for office again, much less run for Congress again. But I decided, because Barack Obama got elected president, he was the most pro-abortion. I mean, this guy was even against the ban on partial birth abortion. He was so horrible. He was going to confiscate our weapons, and I'm a strong gun guy. I believe, in fact, I've got a 100% rating from the National Right to Life and an A rating from the NRA, because that's something I'm not going to compromise. When it comes to the Second Amendment, that's the one that protects all the other amendments. And I will never compromise on that. And I am thankful to see so many packing tonight. That's the other thing I wanted to tell you. When I was in the state legislature, we were one of the first states in the country to pass a concealed carry law. That was my bill as well. And I believe very, very strongly that the best way to take down crime is to pass a concealed carry bill, and you don't know who's packing. So the criminals, the thugs, they ought to think twice before they approach somebody. And you see, our crime in Arizona has been going consistently down. First we passed the concealed carry, then we passed constitutional carry, so anybody can carry, and it's a great thing. And I also know that because Lori Corbin's here tonight, that I'm safe, because I know she's always packing. So, when she was at the state legislature, she used to pack on the House floor. True story. She had a pink gun, which was was it pink or purple?
Raspberry.
Raspberry pink. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't get the right color. But anyway, so I ran for office again in 2012. Ran to go back to Congress because Obama had passed all these horrible things, and he capped it off with taking over our healthcare system with Obamacare. And I promised that I would do everything I could to repeal Obamacare. And I ran against the McCain machine that year. As a matter of fact, both John McCain and Jeff Flake endorsed my opponent, because Matt Salmon is not a go-along, get-along guy. He doesn't play nice with all the Republicans. Well, to translate that story, not all Republicans are good. Some of them are bums. And some of them have to be stood up to. And you have to fight against Republicans sometimes just as much as you fight against some of the Democrats. Sometimes I feel like the Republicans are even worse because they know better.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I ran against the guy that was the Speaker of the Arizona House, and he was endorsed by Jeff Flake and John McCain, and they both cut television ads for him and did everything they could to defeat me, and I beat the guy.
Thank God.
I won the primary, and in my district, once you win the primary, this is District 5, Andy Biggs has my seat now. And I'll talk about Andy in a minute, because when I left, I convinced Andy to run, and I was the chairman of his campaign. And I think he's doing a pretty damn good job.
Yes.
But anyway, I ran against the whole McCain machine. I won. And then after I won the primary, when everybody knew I would win the general pretty easily, because it's a strong Republican district, I get this envelope from John McCain. And I opened it up, and it's a $5,000 check for my campaign. I found my own envelope, put a return on it, and I sent it back to him. I said, no thanks. You weren't with me on the takeoff. You're sure as hell not going to be with me on the landing. And so when I thank you very much. So when I went back to Congress, I went back there on a mission to do everything I could to stop a president that thought he was a king. I mean, this is a president that used executive powers like they were going out of style. And he forgot about the separation of powers. But anyway, I decided to go back and fight this guy. And I found out, after staying out of it for 12 years, that things had changed a lot. That the Republicans had become a bunch of wimps. And so I go back there, and John Boehner is the Speaker of the House. Crybaby John. Anyway, so we tried every way we could to try to get a vote on repealing Obamacare, and we couldn't get the guy to bring it up. And so we're at a retreat in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and it's a Republican retreat, and one of my dearest friends comes up to me. His name's Jim Jordan, congressman from Ohio. Comes up to me and he says, hey Matt, you've been here before. A lot of us were talking, we'd like to do something. You got some ideas? And I said, yeah, let's form a new group. And that night, the Freedom Caucus was born.
Yeah.
And the guys that started the Freedom Caucus was Jim Jordan, Ron DeSantis, Mark Meadows, President Trump's chief of staff, and me. We started the Freedom Caucus, and we decided to take holy hell to the Republicans that weren't following up on the promises that they made. And so we got back to Washington, and a week later we had our first meeting of the Freedom Caucus, about 32 people, including Cynthia Lummis. You ever heard of her? Wonderful lady. She's the senator from Wyoming right now. She was the only female member of the conservative Freedom Caucus. But anyway, she's coming out here to do an event for me next week. But anyway, they nominated Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, and me to go in and tell John Boehner to get out of town, or we would vote him out of his seat. So we did. We didn't know any better. It's kind of like, easier to ask forgiveness and permission. We just walked in and we plopped down in his office and we said, we're going to have a motion to vacate the chair. And I think we got the votes to take care of it. Well, whether we did or whether we didn't, 2 days later he resigned. And I was really proud that we forced him out. And anyway, the rest is kind of history. We got Paul Ryan, who didn't do much better. But the fact is, and please folks, know this, the Republicans are going to take back the majority. It's going to happen. And I'd love to celebrate, and I'd love to do high fives with you and cheer and everything. But the fact is, they're going to probably choose another loser as Speaker, Kevin McCarthy.
No.
That's probably who they're going to pick. And we're going to be in the same bailiwick we were with John Boehner and with Paul Ryan. Because Kevin McCarthy doesn't have a compass, and he doesn't really have a strong belief structure, he just wants to be Speaker. We've got to convince somebody like Jim Jordan or Andy Biggs to run for Speaker, because if that happens, things will change. Now that gets, and I do want to say this, you heard a little bit about FreedomWorks before. FreedomWorks. Basil, you went back there to go to that conference put on by FreedomWorks. I'm proud to say that as a congressman, my second time round, I got their top award. And Adam Brandon, who heads that group, called me about 3 months ago, he says, hey, guess what? We just voted unanimously as a board. We're going to endorse you for your governor. So FreedomWorks has endorsed my candidacy for governor. 6 million strong across the country. All freedom fighters. All freedom fighters. And the reason is because talk is cheap, folks. Anybody can say anything they want to say. Anybody, any candidate stands up. Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger? Remember Jesse the Body Ventura? These celebrities that were going to be such great, strong guys? and they ended up being a couple of sissies. They didn't do anything that advanced the conservative cause. They sold us out. That's because anybody can say whatever they want, but the only way that you can guarantee you're getting something real is look at the record. Look at the record. If somebody has served in office before, they have to cast votes. And they have to piss somebody off. Every time you cast a vote, half of America either hates you or loves you. And yeah, I had to cast thousands of them, and I'm proud of my record. Why did I get the awards from Freedom Works or from Citizens Against Government Waste? I got also the Freedom Award from the Family Research Council on conservative social issues. But the fact is, these things happen because of your voting record. And as I run, and I tell you why I'm running, I hope you'll understand that I am the real deal. I'm a proven conservative fighter, and what I'm telling you is not just to get elected, because I need another elected office like a hole in the head. I really believe that. Look, it's a tough thing to go and lead if you're doing it the right way. If you're trying to go kiss everybody's butt and have the media love you and go to the nice dinners with the rich people and everything, it's a different thing. But if you're fighting your guts out against the media and you're fighting for the cause of freedom and patriots, it's not easy. It's not easy. You get kicked in the teeth a lot. I'm used to that. In fact, when I talked Andy Biggs into running for my office, I told him the truth. Every morning I get kicked in the teeth by the Obama administration. In the afternoon I get kicked in the teeth by the Republican leadership. And then I go sleep on a mat in my office. Why don't you run for my office? And Andy said, well, thanks a lot. I thought I was your friend. I said, yeah, that's why I'm asking you, Andy, because I know you'll actually do the job. But the reason I'm running for governor is because I don't believe that Washington, D.C. is ever going to fix it.
No, not.
We've seen time and time again, the Republicans have had everything. During Bush's time, they had everything. During Trump's time, they had everything. And a lot of the problems that we keep hoping get fixed, they never get fixed. And so I really do believe that our freedom has been eroded to a point. I was at a function with Andy Biggs about 2 nights ago, and he was there to support me. And he said, we're at a crossroads this election. And I got up after and I said, no, we're not, Andy. We're not at a crossroads. We were at a crossroads a long time ago, and we took the wrong turn already. And we're about to jump off the cliff.
Right.
And if we don't get the heck back to where we started, then it's never going to get fixed. And I believe that our founding fathers actually had the antidote. It's called the Constitution. And in the Constitution, they created a separation of powers, not only at the federal level between the judiciary and the executive and the legislative, but they created a vertical separation of powers. Probably even a more important one, between the federal government and the states. And they enshrined that in the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. In Article 1, they give 30 enumerated powers to Congress. What does that mean? That means that if it ain't here in the book, they don't have the power. It's all left to the states and the people per the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. And guess what, folks? They have broken that time and time and time again. Basil said, it's easier to ask for forgiveness or permission. That's going to be my motto. Because my policy with the federal government is going to be Nancy Reagan's policy. Just say no. And I've had people ask me, Matt, does that mean you're not going to take the federal money? No, we paid the federal money. That's our tax dollars. I'm going to take the federal money, and then I'm going to tell them to shove it. We're not going to do what you're telling us to do if it's not constitutional and if it's not in the best interest of our state. If it's not in the Constitution, you don't have the power or the authority to tell us what to do.
That's right.
And the reverse of that, is true too. If they're not doing the job that they're required to do in the Constitution, then we have the ability to pick up the ball and do it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about illegal immigration. I'm talking about the fact that in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, it says in bold print that the federal government promises, guarantees that it will protect the states from invasion. Are we being invaded?
Yes.
Are we being protected?
No.
Do we have a right to stand up for our constitutional authorities?
Yes.
Damn straight we do. And so I believe as governor, and I had a long conversation with Abbott, the governor of Texas, about 3 weeks ago. They're building the wall. And the first press conference I hold when I'm governor is going to be on the border with a post hole digger, because we're going to continue to build the wall if they're not going to get it done. And if we have to offset on state lands to get it done, we'll get it done. I know that means we're probably going to have to negotiate with the tribes as well, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. The second thing is, the federal government is telling our law enforcement, I've met with all of our sheriffs numerous times, our border sheriffs, and they're telling me that all they can do is glass, the area, glass the mountains, and that they can't apprehend anybody. That's BS. They have the authority. We have the authority to enforce state laws. And guess what? One state law is criminal trespass. And I know how we can beef it up too. Again, with Governor Abbott, what they did in Texas was they put in statute the term disaster area. And once they declare a disaster area, the penalties for breaking the laws in the state go way up. Yeah, like incarceration instead of just paying a fine. And so what they've done is declared the counties where they're having the biggest problem with illegal immigration crossover, disaster areas. And that allows their law enforcement to arrest people and incarcerate them for simple things like criminal trespass. We will do that in Arizona too when I'm governor. We'll get it through the legislature, we'll get it done, we will arrest, and we will send a message to the federal government and to the people who believe there's a welcome mat for the United States. Might be, but not in Arizona. If you come to Arizona, you're going to be arrested. And not only that, I'm going to take a page out of Trump's book, where we're building the wall and send the bill to Mexico. We're going to incarcerate, we're going to send the bill to the federal government. And we will take that all the way to the Supreme Court. Because I believe we actually have a Supreme Court now with the 3 Trump nominees that actually understand it. And why do I say that? Because 2 months ago, they upheld what the left calls a controversial bill. It was a ban on ballot harvesting that we passed in the state of Arizona. And the left sued and said it is suppressing voter turnout. And so it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, with all 3 of Trump's appointees, they sided with Arizona. And they upheld our ban on ballot harvesting. They also upheld our law that says if you don't vote in the right precinct, that your vote doesn't count. The third thing they did just recently, which makes me believe that they actually are starting to care about this kind of stuff, is they upheld the policy that Trump had remain in Mexico on asylum, which I think is a good thing. And so I believe that sends a message to us. They're willing to stand up for states' rights, and they're willing to understand the Constitution is not a static document. It is a document that's just as relevant to, it's not a living document, it is a static document, and it's just as relevant today as it ever was. So the 3 things that I want you to know that I would like to do when I'm governor, first is protection. And protection first is the border, and I've talked about that. Second, there's a big movement across the country, and it's crescendoing with the DOJ investigating the Phoenix City Police Department. And it is to defund the police. They're doing everything they can. The vice mayor of Phoenix wears a t-shirt to the city council meeting saying defund the police. The woman that Merrick Garland, who's the attorney general, by the way, the same guy that wants to make terrorists out of everybody that wants to go use their First Amendment privileges at school board meetings. And I've fired up letters. We will fight that tooth and nail. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But the fact is, there's a big movement to try to defund the police. The person that Merrick Garland put in charge of the DOJ investigation, her name is Kristen, and I can't remember her last name, but she wrote an op-ed piece last year calling for, Kristen Clark. And she wrote an op-ed piece last year calling for defunding the police. So you know what her motives are. And she said, if they don't follow the remedies that we give them, then we're going to go ahead and litigate. Well, it's a railroad job. And so I've got an idea that any city that tries to defund the police is going to lose their state share of revenues, and we're talking tens of millions of dollars. The second thing that they're trying to do is take away qualified immunity from officers. What does that mean? That means that if an officer has to make a split-second decision between life and death to protect you or me or his partner or her partner or themselves, but they're going to be wondering in the back of my mind, if I do this, am I going to be personally sued? Well, that's going to happen over my dead body too. We will take away shared revenues from any city that does that. We will back the blue in this state. We will send a clear message that we stand with our law enforcement, and this is a good place to wear the badge. Why is that important? Right now, they're having a heck of a time recruiting law enforcement. They're down about 30% all across the state. And why would they? I mean, everybody is always saying how, you know, from the left is saying how lousy they are and everything. We've got to stand up for our law enforcement. The third thing under protection is something that Basil talked about, and that is election integrity. I got one word only. If you don't have an ID, you don't vote in this state. And right now, 92% of our votes last time were done by mail. And there's no requirement for voter ID on mail. All you do is sign. And the signature checking is pretty haphazard at best. So we've got to have ID for everything. The second thing is, we got to get back to precinct voting.
Yes.
No law changes in the last 60 days. No changes whatsoever, because a judge, in the name of COVID, extended the registration date, and over 100,000 new people registered. And then with the poll watchers, you mentioned that a lot of them were ordered to leave. That was because of COVID, and they wouldn't let them even within 30 feet. How's a poll watcher supposed to read a ballot? I can't read something from 30 feet away. Well, they changed those laws in the last 60 days. And so we're going to make a law that nobody, no judges, anybody can change any of the rules for the election in the last 60 days. I'm calling on Governor Ducey to do a special session right now so that the next election is a fair and a free election. And I think, especially for the next election, I know it's going to be some sacrifice on all of our parts, but I really believe we should get away from machines for the next election and get back to hand count. The second thing is the economy, and I really believe that, you know, as we compete for jobs, really high-paying jobs in this state, one of the best things that we can do is get rid of our income tax.
Yes.
We're almost there. We're at 2.5%. Lori and I worked on a national law, it was the fair tax, to get rid of the national income tax and replace it with a consumption tax. Look, Ronald Reagan said, we tax what we want less of. We subsidize what we want more of. Do we really want less of work? Do we want less of entrepreneurialism and investment? I think that if we get rid of our income tax, then we're on an equal footing to compete with Texas and Nevada and Florida. And I believe that will be a good thing. The other thing is, I'm a big disciple of Art Laffer, who did the Laffer curve for Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan's idea on Trickle-Down Economics, and that is when you cut taxes, revenues actually grow. Because when businesses have more of their own money to spend, they actually put it into their businesses, and they hire more people, and they come up with more ideas. And they're paying property taxes, and they're paying sales taxes, and the revenues grow. The third thing is education. And I'm so glad my dear friend Shelley is here tonight. She's one of the vanguard people that's out there trying to expose this social emotional learning stuff. It's horrible. You know, we talk about critical race theory because that's obvious. I mean, that's the most crappy woke theory that we've ever heard of. But social emotional learning is not far behind. And some of the pornography they're putting out there and call it sex education to second and third graders. Look, folks, it's got to go. I believe that our education should be about math, science, reading, writing, civics, and vocational education.
That's right.
Those things. Not every kid's going to go to college. Not every kid's going to college. And we've got to figure out how to give them an opportunity to stay interested in school. My wife, and Shelley's on the board of the East Valley Institute of Technology. My wife actually just started working there a couple weeks ago. But they have over 40 certificate programs where kids can become, get a certificate in computer technology, in healthcare, in cosmetology, in welding. I mean, a whole host of certificates, and they can go out and make $80,000 to $100,000 a year. And like I said, not every kid's going to be bound for college, so let's stop trying to cram square pegs into round holes, and let's let kids decide what they want to do and have families that support it. But the best thing that we can do, so that we stop this woke stuff from the schools, and we make a level playing field is you let parents take their tax dollars and go to the school they want to go to for their kids. And that's what